December 2024. The air is thin, sharp with the scent of pine and frozen earth. Winter sunlight struggles through the dense canopy of ancient firs, dappling the snow-dusted ground in shades of gray. A Belgian forestry team, their breath pluming in the cold, works near the German border. The whine of a chainsaw cuts the profound silence, then stops. Something is wrong. Beneath the gnarled roots of a wind-toppled tree, the earth is dislodged. A shape lies within the icy soil. It is a man, his form perfectly preserved. The uniform is unmistakable. M1942 trousers, worn jump boots, and the faded Screaming Eagle patch of the 101st Airborne Division on his shoulder. They believe they have found a casualty from a war fought 80 years ago, a relic of the Bulge. But then, a shallow breath escapes his lips, turning to vapor in the frigid air. The soldier from 1944 is not a relic. He is alive. Autumn 1944. The scent of victory is in the air. 6 months have passed since the Normandy landings. Paris is free. Allied armies have surged across France and Belgium, pushing the German Wehrmacht back to its own borders. The Siegfried Line, Germany's vaunted western wall, has been breached. The war in Europe, it is believed, is in its final act. The prevailing mood among Allied command is one of supreme confidence. The German army appears to be a spent force, bled white on the Eastern Front, shattered in the West. General Eisenhower's headquarters plans for the final push to the Rhine and beyond. The phrase on every soldier's lips, from the generals in their warm offices to the GIs in their muddy foxholes, is the same: home by Christmas. This optimism concentrates Allied strength to the north and south of one particular sector, a 75-mile front in the Ardennes forest. This is a land of rolling hills, deep ravines, and impenetrable woods, a place of fairy tales and logging towns. Military planners consider it a quiet zone, a ghost front. The terrain is deemed unsuitable for a major armored offensive, especially in the depths of winter. It becomes a place to rest battle-weary divisions and blood-new, untested units just arrived from the United States. The American line here is thin, held by men who believe the real fighting's happening elsewhere. They are dangerously, fatally wrong. Across the border, hidden from the prying eyes of Allied reconnaissance planes, Adolf Hitler prepares his final, desperate gamble. He believes the Western Alliance is a fragile coalition of convenience, one that could shatter under a single, decisive blow. The plan is codenamed Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. It is a deception. The true objective is not defensive. It is a blitzkrieg on a scale not seen since 1940. The goal is audacious. 3 German armies will smash through the weak American lines in the Ardennes. They will cross the Meuse River, bypass Brussels, and seize the vital port of Antwerp. This would sever the supply lines for a third of the Allied forces, trapping 4 complete armies. Hitler is convinced such a catastrophic defeat would force the British and Americans to sue for a separate peace, allowing him to turn Germany's full might against the Soviet Union in the East. The secrecy is absolute. Orders are transmitted by messenger, not by radio. 250,000 soldiers and nearly 1,000 tanks are assembled under the cover of forests and worsening weather. The 6th Panzer Army, an elite SS force, will form the northern spearhead. The 5th Panzer Army will strike the center. The 7th Army will protect the southern flank. Hitler waits for one final, crucial ally: the weather. He needs thick fog, low clouds, and heavy snow to ground the Allies' most decisive weapon, their complete and total air superiority. While this force gathers in the shadows, The men of the U.S. 101st Airborne Division are far from the front. They are in Mourmelon, France, resting and refitting. They are the Screaming Eagles, an elite unit of paratroopers who jumped into Normandy on D-Day and fought for 72 brutal days in Holland during Operation Market Garden. They are exhausted. They are replacing their losses, training new recruits, and expecting to sit out the winter. The war, for them, feels a world away. They do not know that their rest is about to be cut short, or that their name will soon become synonymous with a small, snow-covered Belgian town none of them have ever heard of. The night of December 15th falls over the Ardennes. The temperature plummets. A fresh blanket of snow covers the pines, muffling all sound. In their dugouts, American soldiers of the 2nd and 99th Infantry Divisions shiver and dream of home. They hear nothing but the wind. They see nothing but the endless white. They are unaware that less than a mile away, thousands of German soldiers are checking their weapons, their faces blackened with cork, waiting for the precise moment their world will erupt in fire. The moment comes at 05:30 on the morning of December the 16th, 1944. 2,000 German artillery pieces and rocket launchers open fire simultaneously. The barrage is not a rolling thunder, it is a single, continuous, deafening roar. The very earth of the Ardennes heaves. Trees splinter into matchsticks. American command posts, telephone lines, and artillery positions evaporate in eruptions of mud and fire. For the GIs in their forward positions, the world is reduced to noise, concussion, and terror. Before the shelling even lifts, waves of German Volksgrenadiers emerge from the forests. They are phantoms in the pre-dawn gloom, advancing under the eerie, indirect glow of massive searchlights bounced off the low-hanging clouds. This is the artificial moonlight that will guide the Panzers. The American line, stretched thin over miles of unforgiving terrain, begins to fray, then break. The initial reports reaching senior command are confused, dismissed as a local counterattack. The sheer scale of the offensive is incomprehensible. Nowhere is the collapse more complete than in the sector held by the Green 106th Infantry Division. Positioned on an exposed ridge known as the Schnee Eifel, 2 of its 3 regiments are swiftly encircled. Thousands of men, many of whom have been in Europe for less than a week, are now trapped. They are short on ammunition, food, and leadership. Within days, over 7,000 of them will be forced into the largest mass surrender of American troops in the European theater. The German spearhead has punched a gaping hole in the Allied front. Leading the northern charge is the elite 1st SS Panzer Division, the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. Its armored fist is a battle group commanded by the ruthless Waffen-SS officer, Joachim Peiper. His orders are simple: drive west, take no prisoners, and seize the bridges over the Meuse River at all costs. Peiper's advance is a trail of burned-out American vehicles and murdered prisoners of war. Near the crossroads of Bonya, his men gunned down more than 80 captured American soldiers in a snowy field. The event will become known as the Malmedy Massacre. Word of the atrocity spreads like wildfire among the American troops, stealing their resolve. There will be no retreat. There will be no surrender. In Versailles, at Supreme Headquarters, General Eisenhower stares at the map. The red arrows denoting the German advance are multiplying, pushing deeper into the Allied flank. This is no spoiling attack. This is the major offensive his intelligence staff had assured him was impossible. He acts decisively. He orders his strategic reserve, the 2 battle-hardened airborne divisions resting in France, to the front. For the men of the 101st Airborne, the call comes without warning. The home by Christmas passes are canceled. They are roused from their barracks, scrambling for gear in the dark. There is no time to issue proper winter clothing. Many still wear the same uniforms they fought in during Holland's mild autumn. They are loaded onto a vast convoy of open-topped trucks, a formation known as the Red Ball Express, and hurled north into the Belgian winter. Their destination is a small, unassuming market town that controls a critical network of 7 roads, Bastogne. The Screaming Eagles are in a desperate race against Asso von Montefel's 5th Panzer Army. The German tanks are already closing in. The paratroopers arrive just in time, pouring into the town and fanning out into the surrounding woods and villages to form a defensive perimeter. They are an island of resistance in a sea of German armor. The panzers, unable to dislodge them quickly, simply flow around them, continuing their drive west. By December 21st, the encirclement is complete. The 101st Airborne, along with elements of the 10th Armored Division, is completely cut off, surrounded, and outnumbered 5-1. The siege of Bastogne has begun. It will become a crucible of cold, hunger, and relentless combat. The Screaming Eagles dug in, preparing for a fight that would define their legacy. But for one paratrooper among them, the battle for this frozen town would end before it truly began, his personal story swallowed by the chaos of the forest. The mystery is not that he was lost to the war, but how the war, for 80 years, never truly claimed him. For the individual paratrooper of the 101st, the war was not a map with arrows. It was a universe of frozen mud and splintered pine, contained within the lip of a foxhole. The enemy was not just the German soldier, but the cold itself. It was a physical presence, a relentless predator. It seeped through worn fatigues, numbing fingers and turning feet to blocks of unfeeling wood. It froze the oil on their M1 rifles, threatening to turn the weapons to useless clubs of steel. The ground, hard as iron, resisted every scrape of the entrenching tool, making a shallow grave the only available shelter. The psychological strain was immense. The days were a tense stillness, scanning the endless white trees for any flicker of movement. The nights were a symphony of terror. The shriek of incoming Nebelwerfer rockets, the GI's screaming mimes, tore the darkness apart, followed by the percussive crump of artillery that shook the very roots of the forest. German patrols, clad in white camouflage, would ghost through the perimeter, creating phantom battles that frayed already raw nerves. In this disorienting landscape of snow and fog, a man could become separated from his platoon by a few dozen yards and be utterly, terrifyingly alone. He could fall, wounded and unseen, into a snowdrift and simply vanish from the war, his absence noted only when the morning roll was called. This personal battle for survival was fought over a piece of ground of immense strategic value. Bastogne was not a fortress. It was a simple crossroads town. But it was the nexus of 7 paved roads, a hub that controlled all movement in the northern Ardennes. For the German 5th Panzer Army, these roads were arteries, essential for funneling fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements to their armored spearheads, driving for the Meuse River. To maintain the Blitzkrieg's critical momentum, Bastogne had to be taken quickly. For the Allies, holding the town was paramount. Every hour the 101st held out, the town became a stone in the gears of the German offensive, snarling their timetable and bleeding their resources. The American defense was a desperate improvisation. The paratroopers, along with remnants of armored and tank destroyer units, formed a circular perimeter just miles across. They dug in among the villages on the town's outskirts, Places like Foy, Noville, and Marvy, names that would be etched into the division's history with blood. It was a thin crust of resistance, a hastily drawn line in the snow against which waves of German armor and infantry would break. The screaming eagles, trained to be an offensive weapon dropped from the sky, were now forced to become an immovable object, anchored to the frozen Belgian earth. But tactics and terrain alone do not win sieges. The will to fight is forged by leadership. By December 22nd, the situation was grim. Ammunition was critically low. Medical supplies were nearly exhausted. The German commander, General von Luttwitz, believing the American position to be hopeless, sent a party under a flag of truce to deliver a formal demand for surrender. The note was brought to the 101st's acting commander, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe. Reading the lengthy German ultimatum, which promised the honorable surrender of the town or its total annihilation, McAuliffe's initial reaction was one of amused disbelief. He muttered to his staff, "Ah, nuts." When it came time to draft a formal reply, a debate began on how to phrase the rejection. It was decided that the general's first instinctive response could not be improved upon. A single word was typed on a sheet of paper and handed back to the German emissaries. Nuts. The message was a spark in the powder keg of American morale. It spread from command post to foxhole, a simple, defiant, and uniquely American answer to overwhelming odds. This singular act of defiance galvanized the defenders, but words alone could not stop the German steel that continued to tighten its grip. On the other side of the perimeter, the German soldier fought the same enemy. The cold was impartial. It stiffened the grease in their machine guns and turned their bread to stone. For the grenadiers of the 26th Volksgrenadier Division and the tankers of the elite Panzerlehr, Bastogne was not a prize. It was an obstruction, a fatal delay. Every hour spent battering the American line was an hour their armored spearheads were starved of fuel and ammunition. The pressure from high command was relentless. The timetable was everything. They saw the American paratroopers not as heroic defenders, but as stubborn fanatics, needlessly costing German lives and squandering the precious element of surprise. They probed the lines constantly, launching attacks against key villages, only to be thrown back by a defense that seemed to grow stronger with each assault. Their superior Panther and Tiger tanks were formidable, but in the close quarters fighting of the forests and villages, they were vulnerable to a single, determined American with a bazooka. For the German soldier, the initial euphoria of the offensive was curdling into a grim, frustrating slog in the snow. This war of attrition was taking a catastrophic toll inside the pocket. The American aid station, set up in the town's barracks, had become a scene of organized hell. Medics, their hands stained red, worked by the dim light of lanterns. There was no more plasma. Morphine was rationed, drop by drop. Bandages were washed, dried, and reused. Surgeons operated with razor blades and carpenter's saws. The wounded lay in rows on the floor, their groans a constant chorus beneath the thunder of artillery. The problem was not just medical. Artillery crews were down to a handful of shells per gun, ordered to fire only on a direct order from division headquarters. Riflemen counted their last clips of ammunition. Food was a slice of bread and a spoonful of beans. The perimeter was a fragile shell, and inside, the ability to resist was being hollowed out, hour by agonizing hour. The 101st was not just being attacked, it was being consumed from within. The fate of Bastogne and its thousands of defenders now rested on a single, uncontrollable factor: the sky. For 7 days, a thick blanket of fog and low cloud had smothered the Ardennes. It was Hitler's greatest ally, the shield that had hidden his armies and grounded the overwhelming air power of the Allied forces. For the men in the foxholes, the gray, oppressive ceiling was a prison wall. They would listen, praying to hear the drone of a C-47 transport plane, but hearing only the wind. The siege was a battle of time, and time was running out. Every soldier knew that without resupply, without air support to break the German attacks, defiance and courage would eventually be overwhelmed by simple, brutal mathematics. The battle for a Belgian crossroads town had become a desperate vigil, with an entire division of men staring up at an empty, unforgiving sky. The morning of December 23rd dawns with no change. The sky is a uniform, leaden gray. Inside the Bastogne perimeter, the 8th day of the siege begins in near total silence, broken only by the sporadic crack of a sniper's rifle or the distant rumble of a tank engine. It is the silence of exhaustion, the silence of dwindling hope. The wounded in the aid station now number over 800. The artillery has fallen quiet, its crews hoarding the last few shells. For the men in the foxholes, the world has shrunk to a few frozen yards of earth and a view of the impenetrable fog that has become their jailer. Then, around 9:00 a.m., a subtle shift occurs, a change in the quality of the light. The oppressive gloom seems to thin. A soldier, huddled in a trench near the village of Marvy, looks up. He sees it first. A small, ragged patch of blue. It is the first break in the clouds in over a week. A rumor, a whisper, spreads along the line faster than any radio message. The sky is clearing. For the German commanders of the 5th Panzer Army, this is a signal for renewed urgency. Their window of opportunity, provided by the weather, is closing. The attacks intensify, particularly on the western and southern flanks. They must crush this pocket of resistance before Allied air power can be brought to bear. Grenadiers and tanks of the Panzer Lehr Division slam into the thin line held by the 327th Glider Infantry, seeking a final, decisive breach. But the men of the 101st are no longer just looking at the enemy in front of them. They are looking up, listening. At 11:50 a.m., they hear it. A low, deep drone felt as much as heard. It is not the familiar, menacing sound of German artillery. This is different. It grows steadily, a multi-layered hum that seems to vibrate in the frozen air. Heads pop up from foxholes. Men risk exposure to a sniper's bullet just to scan the sky. The clouds part as if a curtain is being drawn. Brilliant, blinding winter sunlight floods the landscape, and then they come. Emerging from the west, flying low and steady, is a seemingly endless stream of American aircraft. The first are the Pathfinders, dropping colored smoke to mark the drop zones inside the small perimeter. Close behind them are the transports. 241 C-47 Skytrains, the workhorses of the Air Corps, flying in perfect formation. For the defenders on the ground, it is a vision of salvation. They stand up in their trenches, cheering, crying, oblivious to the danger. The sky blossoms with color. Thousands of parachutes deploy, a vibrant cascade against the blue. Each color has a meaning. Red for ammunition, blue for medical supplies, yellow for rations and engineering equipment, green for fuel. The planes fly directly into a storm of German anti-aircraft fire. Flak bursts pepper the sky around them. Tracers reach up like fiery claws. Some planes are hit, trailing smoke, but they hold their course, determined to deliver their cargo. The canisters and bundles thud into the snow-covered fields. Men scramble from their positions, racing to retrieve the precious supplies. It is a frantic harvest. They haul crates of .30 caliber rounds, bandoliers of machine gun belts, and most critically, 105 millimeter artillery shells. They drag stretchers loaded with plasma, morphine, and surgical dressings toward the overflowing aid station. The tide has not just turned. It has been reversed in a matter of minutes. The spectacle is not lost on the Germans. From their positions in the surrounding forests, they watch as their enemy is reborn from the sky. Their greatest advantage, the isolation of the 101st, has vanished, and the C-47s are only the beginning. Shortly after noon, a new sound joins the drone of the transports. A higher-pitched, more aggressive snarl. Squadrons of P-47 Thunderbolts, fighter bombers nicknamed Jugs, appear over the horizon. They are not dropping supplies, they are hunting. They peel off, diving on German tank concentrations and troop formations that are now starkly visible against the white snow. Their 8 50-caliber machine guns tear into infantry ranks. Rockets and 500-pound bombs slam into Panther tanks that have terrorized the perimeter for days. For the first time, the GIs in their foxholes have a front-row seat to the awesome, terrifying power of Allied air superiority. The psychological impact is devastating for one side and electrifying for the other. The siege of Bastogne is broken open to the sky, but the battle on the ground is far from over. The German command, seeing their prize being snatched away, knows they have only one option left. They cannot afford a protracted fight under an open sky. They must now throw everything they have at the American lines in one final, massive assault. As the sun begins to set on December 24th, Christmas Eve, the German artillery begins a bombardment more intense than any the defenders have yet endured. The supplies have given the 101st the means to fight, but now they must face the full, desperate fury of an enemy with nothing left to lose. The Christmas Eve bombardment is a final, convulsive effort to break the American will. It is a storm of high explosives and shrapnel that scours the perimeter. In the town of Bastogne, the makeshift hospital takes a direct hit. The cellar, filled with wounded, collapses. Medics and chaplains dig through the rubble with their bare hands, pulling out the living and the dead. In the foxholes, the paratroopers press themselves into the frozen earth, enduring the maelstrom, waiting for the ground assault they know is coming. As the shelling lifts, the attack begins. Under the cold light of flares, German tanks and infantry emerge from the tree line, focusing their assault on the western arc of the perimeter. This is the sector held by the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment, men who came to war not in a parachute, but in the fragile canvas shells of a glider. The elite Panzerlehr and the 15th Panzer Grenadier Divisions throw their full weight against these thin lines around the villages of Champs and Hemreau. Panther tanks, their long 75mm cannons spitting fire, advance across the snow, so their engines a deep-throated growl. Behind them, grenadiers in white camouflage cloaks move in disciplined waves. But this is not the same American line they had faced days before. The airdrop has changed the equation. The American artillery, silent for so long, answers with a furious, coordinated roar. The new shells, delivered from the sky just hours before, rain down on the German formations, shattering their cohesion, turning the snow red. The paratroopers in their foxholes meet the infantry charges with a disciplined curtain of machine gun and rifle fire. The ammunition crates, once nearly empty, are now full. Bazooka teams, emboldened, stalk the German armor in the darkness, firing from ditches and shattered buildings. The fighting is intimate and brutal, a desperate close-quarters struggle for every frozen yard of ground. The American line bends, it cracks in places, but it does not break. Christmas morning brings no respite. The attacks resume with the dawn. But the German momentum is gone, spent against the unyielding defense. The assaults are now more sporadic, less coordinated. The elite German divisions have bled themselves white on the Bastogne perimeter. For the German soldier, the realization is grim. The gamble has failed. The road to the Meuse is permanently blocked. While the 101st fights for its life inside the pocket, another battle is raging to the south. General George S. Patton's Third Army, in one of the most remarkable logistical feats of the war, has disengaged from its front, turned 90 degrees, and driven 100 miles north through ice and snow. Patton's orders to his men are simple: drive north and relieve Bastogne. Leading the charge is the 4th Armored Division. Their Sherman tanks are not waiting for infantry support. They are in a desperate race against time. On the afternoon of December 26, the day after Christmas, the men of the 101st, holding the southern perimeter, hear a new sound. It is the distinct crack of American tank guns, but they are coming from outside the circle. Near the village of Assenois, the spearhead of the 4th Armored Division, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, smashes through the last line of German resistance. At 1650, the lead Sherman tank, named Cobra King, rumbles through the woods and into the American lines. Paratroopers, their faces gaunt and blackened by cordite, rise from their foxholes. They climb onto the tank, shaking hands with the crew. There are no grand speeches, just the quiet, exhausted relief of men who have stared into the abyss and survived. The 10-day siege is over. Bastogne has held. The German offensive has been fatally crippled. The town now becomes a critical pivot point for the Allied counterattack that will ultimately erase the bulge and drive the German army back toward its final collapse. The Screaming Eagles have earned an immortal place in the annals of military history, but victory in such a battle is never clean. The forest floor is a churned landscape of wreckage and death. In the chaos of the final, desperate assaults, men had simply disappeared, their fates swallowed by the fury of the fight, their stories paused, waiting to be found. The silence that follows the battle is heavier than the noise. It settles over the Ardennes like a second snowfall, muffling the world. The air, once thick with the scream of shells and the rip of machine guns, now carries only the scent of pine, diesel, and death. The work of counting the cost begins. The forest around Bastogne is a frozen scrapyard. The hulks of German Panther tanks sit silent and blackened, their long guns pointing at the sky in a final, useless gesture. Wrecked half-tracks and American tank destroyers litter the roadsides. The snow is no longer white. It is a churned canvas of gray and brown, stained with oil, cordite, and blood. Here and there, a discarded helmet or a frozen rifle marks the spot where a soldier fell. For the Screaming Eagles, victory has a bitter taste. The division, along with the attached units that held the pocket, has suffered nearly 2,000 casualties. Hundreds more are crippled by trench foot and frostbite. As the relief column from Patton's Third Army widens the corridor, a stream of ambulances begins the slow, painful work of evacuation. The men who climb onto the trucks are not the same ones who arrived just 10 days earlier. Their faces are gaunt, their eyes hollowed by exhaustion and the things they have seen. They have become old men in a week. The cost for the German attackers is catastrophic. The elite Panzer Lehr division is shattered, its strength bled away against the American perimeter. The 26th Volksgrenadier Division is a shadow of its former self. Hitler's finest remaining armored formations have been wrecked, not on the banks of the Meuse, but in the woods and fields surrounding a small Belgian market town. For every American casualty, the Germans have suffered at least 3. Their bodies lie in the snow where they fell, waiting for the eventual arrival of burial details. The Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last great gamble, has broken its back on the anvil of Bastogne. The town itself is a ruin. Its centuries-old stone buildings are gutted shells. The central square, where General McAuliffe had his headquarters, is a cratered moonscape. Civilians who had huddled in their cellars for 10 days emerge into the pale winter light. They find their homes destroyed, their town liberated but annihilated. Their own losses are grievous, the price of being a crossroads. In the aftermath, the story of the defense becomes legend. General McAuliffe's one-word reply to the surrender demand, "Nuts," is printed in newspapers across the Allied world. It is a symbol of American grit, a defiant shout in the face of impossible odds. On December 30th, McAuliffe issues a Christmas message to his men, finally read after the siege is lifted. He commends their gallant feat of arms, a feat that had stopped the German war machine cold. But beneath the headlines and the commendations lies a grimmer task. Graves' registration teams spread out through the forests, moving from foxhole to foxhole, from one burned-out tank to the next. Their job is to find, identify, and account for every man. It is a slow, methodical process in the frozen earth. Dog tags are collected, personal effects are cataloged, sometimes identifications impossible. The chaos of combat, the fury of an artillery barrage, can erase a man completely. These are the men listed as missing in action. They are the war's ghosts, their fates a permanent question mark for the families waiting at home. The cost was written in blood and steel across the Ardennes snow, but the strategic price for Germany would be far higher, a final unpayable debt on the road to Berlin. That unpayable debt would be collected with brutal efficiency. The Ardennes offensive was the death rattle of the Third Reich in the West. Hitler had gambled his last strategic reserves, his best remaining panzer divisions, his final stockpiles of fuel, and a generation of young soldiers, and lost everything. The Wehrmacht on the Western Front was now a hollowed-out force, capable of stubborn defense, but stripped of its ability to attack. The initiative was now and would remain firmly in Allied hands. The path to the Rhine River, once a formidable objective, was now open. The battle also shattered a dangerous illusion within the Allied command. The supreme confidence of autumn 1944, the easy talk of being home by Christmas, evaporated in the frozen forests. The German army was not a spent force. It was a wounded, dangerous animal, capable of one last, ferocious lunge. The shock of the surprise attack forced a painful reassessment. Intelligence agencies were overhauled, their failure to detect the massive German buildup, a lesson written in thousands of American casualties. The battle hardened the American soldier, burning away the last vestiges of naivete. The men who survived the bulge now understood the true nature of their enemy and the price that would be required for total victory. The strategic repercussions echoed across the continent. While Germany was expending its last reserves in the West, the Eastern Front remained ominously quiet. The Soviets had been massing their own forces for a winter offensive. On January 12, 1945, less than 3 weeks after the relief of Bastogne, Marshal Zhukov unleashed the Red Army across the Vistula River in Poland. It was an avalanche of steel and manpower. Over 2 million Soviet soldiers smashed into German lines that had been stripped of their best units for the Ardennes. The German front in the east did not bend, it disintegrated. The road to Berlin was now a race, and the Soviets had a head start. By crippling his own armies in the west, Hitler had inadvertently sealed the fate of his capital in the east. The war accelerated towards its violent conclusion. The 101st Airborne would go on to capture Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden. Patton's Third Army would plunge deep into the heart of Germany. The names of the Ardennes villages, Bastogne, St. Vith, Malmedy, became symbols of American resilience. Medals were awarded, histories were written, and monuments were raised. The Bulge was enshrined as the U.S. Army's greatest battle, a defining moment of national character. But as the armies moved on, the forest began its slow work of reclamation. Snow covered the wreckage. Pine needles blanketed the foxholes. The earth held the war's debris and its dead. For thousands of families, the end of the war in Europe did not bring closure. It brought a telegram with the words, "Missing in action." For them, the battle never truly ended. It became a permanent, aching void, a story without a final chapter. The world moved on, rebuilding from the ashes of a global conflict, but in the quiet woods of the Ardennes, time stood still. The war moved on, leaving its ghost behind. Their stories frozen in time, waiting for a thaw that would take another 80 years to arrive. That 80-year thaw came not with the spring, but with the fall of a single tree. The discovery of one man, a paratrooper from 1944, is not a postscript to the battle. It is a living chapter, torn from the book of history and inserted into our own. He is a human paradox, a man younger than his own grandchildren, yet a witness to a world that no longer exists. His memory is not a story passed down. It is a direct feed from the frozen mud of the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge was a conflict of immense scale, decided by logistics, air power, and the will of generals. But this soldier's impossible survival forces a different perspective. It reduces the grand strategy to the brutal simplicity of a single foxhole. It reminds us that history is not an abstract force. It is the sum of individual heartbeats, individual fears, and the desperate animal will to endure. The great movements of armies are ultimately carried on the shoulders of solitary men, fighting for the few yards of earth in front of them. The technology that preserved him, a freak combination of trauma, temperature, and biology, is a scientific mystery. But the questions he raises are profoundly human. What is the line between memory and reality? What does it mean to be a relic of a war that is, for the rest of the world, a settled past? He is a ghost who breathes, a monument that bleeds. He carries the weight of a victory he never saw, and the ghosts of comrades who never came home. His reawakening is a stark, unsettling testament. It proves that the past is not a foreign country. It is the ground beneath our feet, a landscape of sleeping soldiers and buried truths. And sometimes, without warning, the ground gives up its dead. Or, in this one impossible case, it gives up the living.